This week, very quietly, the Texas Senate passed a new abortion bill that does a host of things, but also contains the most absurd, egregious, unconstitutional language I think we've ever seen in a bill. I have to say, this might be one of the most egregious attacks on the judiciary we've seen since, I guess, yesterday, because I feel like I say that every day in a Trump administration that believes that they can play judge and jury in this country, and obviously the Republicans' efforts as of late to just consistently attack judges and the judicial branch as we drift toward authoritarianism and fascism in the United States and try to fight back against it. I want to get into what this bill does and the language of this bill because it will just blow your mind. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about where abortion and women's health care stands in the United States right now. Right? This is a bill, or excuse me, this is an article from a while ago, but it analyzes CDC data and it found that the maternal mortality rate in Texas increased 56% from 2019 to 2022, compared with just 11% nationwide during the same time period. Maternal mortality rate being defined as any woman who dies while pregnant, while giving birth, or shortly after birth. I believe the CDC defines that within 42 days, if I'm not mistaken, or a period similar to that. That's the definition of maternal mortality rate, right? And so most of these women are women who actually got pregnant, intended to get pregnant, wanted to carry their child to term, but they passed away. And you say, well, why in Texas is this rate so much higher than the rest of the country? Well, actually, if we look at CDC data for the entire country, in red states with complete and total abortion bans, I talk about this quite a bit, the maternal mortality rate is significantly higher in states like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, et cetera. And the maternal mortality rate in the United States already is almost the worst in the developed world, according to the CDC. And after the overturning of Roe v. Wade and these very restrictive abortion laws, again, we've seen that get even worse, specifically in red states. And you ask, well, why is that happening? Well, because a bunch of doctors in these states are getting up and they're leaving. They don't want to work in states where they can't do their job or they risk being criminalized for doing their job, right? A lot of these abortion bills are very vague, very confusing. You can essentially get a felony just for doing your job. If a woman walks into the hospital and is in serious pain, really needs help, there's an emergency, she's pregnant, doctors may hesitate to act on what they know to be medically correct because, well, what if the government claims that I was trying to give an abortion when I was just trying to do my job, save someone's life? Why would I want to work under these conditions? A Republican DA could slide across a piece of paper, and now I have to go to state court. I have to go to court and pay a bunch of lawyer fees and fight against, a felony charge that could land me in prison for up to 10 years, and I could lose my license. Why would you want to do that? Right? You wouldn't. And furthermore, in these states, it's becoming increasingly hard to do your job. We see this is in Louisiana. This article was written in September of 2024. I've talked about it before. They were conducting drills ahead of a Louisiana law for pregnancy care drugs. So let's read this for a second. Less than 2 weeks before a controversial Louisiana law reclassifying common pregnancy care pills as controlled dangerous substances takes effect, doctors are trying to prepare for what delays in accessing life-saving medication could mean. In one New Orleans area hospital, they are already practicing time drills running from delivery rooms to the locked medicine cabinet where controlled substances are stored to see how long it will take. In one recent drill, it took more than 2 minutes for doctors and nurses to retrieve misoprostol for a pretend patient who is bleeding out. Quote, every second counts. Now, this law did end up going into effect. And essentially what it does is it takes the two most common abortion pills, reclassifies them as controlled dangerous substances so they cannot be like in a hospital room. They have to be in a locked, controlled area, in this case, in this hospital, across the hospital, right? And the reason that's important is because these pills are used for a lot more than just abortion, right? As it says, if somebody has actually just given birth, but they're bleeding quite a bit, they might use these pills to actually save that woman's life. So, because at least one of the pills is going to slow down / stop that bleeding. And so, again, they're doing time drills where you're going to sprint as fast as you can from one room all the way across the hospital, 2 minutes to try to save someone's life. Why the fuck, frankly, would you want to work under those conditions? You wouldn't. It's gross. It's disgusting. And any conservative, actual conservative, does not believe that the government should be, getting involved in these ways, not only in women's lives, but, how doctors operate, what goes on in an operating room or in these circumstances to save someone's life, right? It's absurd. It's egregious. It's causing people to die. That's too much government overreach. And I say all this, obviously, in a way, in a time where it can be very, especially with abortion, it's very sad right now because unlike before the election, on a federal level, it's very hard to see when we can do something like reinstate Roe v. Wade. But I talk about this because in wherever you are right now, whatever state, right, your local elections matter a lot. Obviously, we just saw the most expensive judicial election in history in Wisconsin, the Supreme Court race, where Elon Musk, dumped hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know exactly how much, but a lot of money, millions of dollars into this race to try to get the Republican to win. And just by practically a handful of votes, the Democrat running in this race essentially won, right? And it was the difference between an 1850s or some egregiously old, let me check the year, 1849 law was going to come up to the Supreme Court, an 1849 law on an abortion ban, a restrictive abortion ban, excuse me. And so like her winning, this Democrat winning the Supreme Court race was the difference between lives, right? Not only the difference between women having the right, the constitutional fundamental right to an abortion and protecting those women and those doctors who are working hard. It was also the difference between life and death for a lot of women, access to healthcare, right? Because again, this maternal mortality rate number, a lot of it has little to do with women wanting abortions. It has to do with women in the state of Texas or in the state of Georgia who get pregnant intending to be pregnant, but they can't find a provider. The provider they did have for their last pregnancy left the state because they don't want to work under these conditions. They're too scared to seek out healthcare. We've seen many interviews like that in Texas where women say, I just haven't seen a doctor because I'm too scared to. Women who haven't seen an OBGYN because one isn't near them, and so they haven't seen one in a long time, and then they get pregnant, so they weren't able to see an OBGYN before that, right? Which can obviously potentially cause complications. I am from, and have pretty much lived my whole life in the state of Georgia. Half our counties don't have OBGYNs, right? A lot of women are driving well over an hour to see a primary care doctor. And that got significantly worse after our, heartbeat bill. And so this is the difference between life and death for a lot of women. So make sure, when your local elections are coming up, as this, fight continues to gear up, because you can not only, secure your right to healthcare, increase your livelihood, give you, the constitutional rights you deserve, but also your family members, your mom, your sister, etc. Now, with all that said, let's get into this bill, this Texas bill. And before I do, if you are enjoying this video, it actually does go I know this is kind of cringe, but because, it's like the YouTube thing, go hit the like, subscribe. But in all honesty, it does go a really, really long way for me. So if you just scroll down real quick, hit like, subscribe to my channel, it'd mean a lot. I really appreciate you being here. Senate Bill 2880, which passed the Senate last week, allows anyone who manufactures, distributes, mails, prescribes, or provides an abortion-inducing drug to be sued for up to $100,000. It expands the wrongful death statute to encourage family members, especially men who believe their partner had an abortion, to sue up to 6 years after the event, and empowers the Texas Attorney General to bring lawsuits on behalf of, quote, unborn children of residents of this state. Now, again, this is past the Senate. It's being heard on the House. I'm going to go look at what else is tucked in the bill. Quote, the bill says no state judge has jurisdiction to rule on its constitutionality. And if they were to do it anyways, they could be personally sued for up to $100,000. The judge would waive their usual protections of governmental immunity and could not call on the office of the Attorney General to defend them in court. Brian Hughes, a Republican and the author of the bill, said the law could still be challenged in federal court, but removing the state's judiciary oversight of this law is within the legislature's purview. Quote, we make the rules, he said on the floor of the Senate. We set the jurisdiction. Really? That's how this works now. Okay, so we can write laws that are unconstitutional, blatantly unconstitutional, and then write in the law that the judicial branch cannot rule on the constitutionality of the bill. Really? I wonder why no one's ever done this before. right? Nathan Johnson, a Dallas Democrat, called it a, quote, flagrant, brazen transgression of the principle of separation of powers on which this country and state was founded. Quote, it just seems to me that we're holding the judicial branch of government in contempt if we're going to tell them they can't review our work, Johnson said to Hughes, and I'm surprised you're not equally troubled by this. Legal experts said it's baffling to argue the legislature could pass a law that is unconstitutional and then prevents the courts from declaring it so. If that were an option, lawmakers would inevitably write that clause into every bill and do whatever they wanted without the checks and balances inherent to our system. Quote, could the legislature now pass a law saying every time you vote for a Republican, it counts twice? And if you vote for a Democratic candidate, it counts once, and then put these provisions that make it impossible to challenge? That's a great question, right? And you look at some of the legal experts that they interviewed for this. Quote, I've never seen anything like that in any statute of any kind anywhere. It's just crazy. Absolutely insane. And again, as the same attorney put it, outlandish and shocking. It's disgusting, right? And it continues in a state like Texas that needs help with a variety of things, education, general health care, their power grid, right? Infrastructure issues, that they're focused on this garbage, this absolute unconstitutional garbage, and trying to skirt how our system is very clearly set up. And remember that, in any time where like authoritarianism in general is on the rise, or someone is able to consolidate power, just in general, it always happens through democratic means, right? So don't let people argue to you like, oh, even though this is a very new, never heard of before idea that we can, write into this bill, and there's some stuff in here about how, state officials aren't, it's essentially part of it is a bounty hunter bill, right? State officials aren't actually enforcing it, but private citizens from anywhere, including out of state, can just sue these providers and blah, blah, blah. Don't let people argue to you that, oh, well, it's constitutional based on this and this. Every single time we've seen horrible dictatorship, for example, come to power, it's through democratic means. Always, every time, right? There's not going to be a moment where like Republicans or Donald Trump get on a stage and they're like, hey, we're evil dictators. We're here to take over America. And then we're all going to like run and grab our weapons, and it'll be like a movie scene where we protect against the bad guys. Never how it happens, right? Like for example, in Germany that one time, like the way that guy came to power was all through like democratic means. He didn't do anything unconstitutional, right? His party was elected. He was appointed. Some things happened, and through his constitutional power, he decided to start, essentially breaking down the judicial branch, breaking down checks and balances at the time in Germany, which he was able to do. But it always comes from abusing the democratic system in a way it's not supposed to end up in a place where you have like authoritarianism or literal rule of law or horrible things happening. So this is just egregious, and it's egregiously unconstitutional. So there should be no argument that this should be allowed. It's absurd. And again, here's part of it of expanding the bounty hunter provision under this bill. Someone who manufactures, distributes, mails, prescribes, or provides abortion-inducing drugs can be sued for up to $100,000. There's an exception for medications that are used for medically necessary abortions and exempts the person who has the abortion from being sued. Hughes did not respond to a request for comment, but speaking to the Senate, he said the bill targets pharmaceutical companies that aren't doing enough to ensure their products aren't being sent into states that have banned abortion. The bills allow for a lawsuit even if the abortion pills are not identified as the, quote, actual or proximate cause of death, and says a company that manufactures abortion pills can be held liable whether or not it's determined that their medication was used in the abortion. But by expanding the private lawsuit mechanism in the wrongful death statute, legal experts say the bill is more likely to be used against individuals than corporations. Even without the promise of a $100,000 payout, there have already been wrongful death lawsuits filed against women who helped a friend get an abortion, and a legal challenge against a New York doctor who allegedly shipped medications into Texas. This Democrat senator in Austin described it as a, quote, bounty hunter bonanza. Exactly. So I would challenge you, A, to make sure you know wherever you are when your local elections are, and also read up on this bill, maybe share with a friend or a family member if you so wish, because things like this are getting women killed. Flat out getting women killed. On top of the maternal mortality rate in the United States being so awful, we need to have the right people in office to make sure that not only women have the fundamental constitutional right to an abortion, but also just to basic health care in this country. Women deserve basic health care. And with all that being said, before I go, purely, if you're still here, Purely from a educational standpoint and nothing else. I'm just here to like inform you of another piece of news. This is a website called Aid Access, which has been talked about a lot by Republicans and similar sites to it. What essentially allows an abortion provider, like a doctor from out of the country, to prescribe you abortion pills and send them into the United States. It's where a lot of women these days are getting abortion pills if they wish to have an abortion. I'm not encouraging you to do anything that you don't want to do or that is against your doctor's advice or your personal advice. This is purely educational. Hey, here's this website where you can get abortion pills prescribed to you if you are in a state that doesn't allow abortion. That's just an objective fact. We've been seeing it a lot. And also, interestingly about this site is normally the payment, the total payment is $150, but they are also, in my understanding, from an objective standpoint, is that they are interested in helping women who may not be able to afford $150. So you can also talk to them and actually have that price be lowered and have these pills shipped to you. I'm not encouraging you to do that. I'm not encouraging you to do anything that's against your state's laws. I'm just telling you that this website exists and that relates to my story. Fantastic. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Seriously, it goes a super long way. I appreciate every single one of you. You are amazing. I appreciate you sticking through this longer video. I enjoy making them. And the links to all my other social media sites are in the link in the description. I appreciate you. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one.